This is Tim Minear, writer, producer, and director of this episode of TV's Angel, which we called Home. And here is Stephanie Romanoff, who was so much fun on this episode. Back from the dead. And although not so much back from the dead, just back, because she's still dead in this episode, which is one of the fun things we get to do on this show. My question when I was trying to write this scene, it's a long scene that comes after the opening credits. First, I just wanted to pose the question in the teaser that she was here with an offer. And hopefully that was enough to keep you sticking around to find out what the offer was. But when we came back, I had two things that I needed to service in terms of exposition. And the first thing was that supposedly our gang here had ended world peace when they destroyed Jasmine. And the second thing was that Wolfram and Hart was going to be offered, or at least the Los Angeles office of Wolfram and Hart was going to be offered to our people to run. So those two big ideas needed to come in the next scene. And my fear was that I really wanted the "you ended world peace" thing to be the end of that scene so that we could cut to the chaos in the streets, and that's how I wanted to go out. But I needed to explain that the reason they were being made this offer was because they ended world peace. So the only way that I could really think to have that work was that if she made the offer off screen. So that's what happens when we cut away and go to the credits, and then when it's broadcast on your TVs to commercials, she's actually telling them that she's there to offer them the Los Angeles office of Wolfram and Hart, so that when we come back, there could be this long extended period of silence, and they've already heard this offer, and the audience doesn't know what it is yet. I also thought it would be funny because every time I watch an episode of our show, I have to laugh at the endless opening credits. They just go on and on and on. And so I thought that with those endless opening credits, in the first scene of an episode, it would be funny if no one said a thing until they were done, almost to point up how incredibly funny it was that they went on so long. And so that's what I did. I'm just watching these credits here. Shots from throughout Angel's 4-year history. So we're going to come back in after the title sequence. My two favorite guys, Joss and David. So now we're back with this extended period of silence. This isn't really how I wanted to shoot this scene, although I think it pretty much works because there's a variety of shots. And of course, the way I did this was every time I had a setup for the big scene with all the dialogue, I would start it and watch the clock for 40 or 50 seconds and have each actor just shift uncomfortably for about a minute. And it got pretty hilarious after a while, but I had all the pieces. I had something much more elaborate planned in my head before I showed up this day to shoot this, but I had so many pages I had to shoot that I pretty much just had to stand them where they were going to be standing for the scene that's coming up here. I love Amy there. And the silence continues. And Stephanie just kicked it out. So once my name is clear of the screen, someone will speak.
You want to run that?
It seems stronger to me to come in on reactions than to come in on her actually making the offer. When I can't think of something to write, I often don't write anything. And then I pretend it's a style. So we pulled out at least a page and a half of talk. But I think you get the basic gist of what you need to know here, which is that our people are being rewarded for their fine attempt at ending world peace. That little cutaway to Gunn there was something that my editor found. We wanted to set up a little bit that maybe Gunn had a different attitude about this than some of the others did. And that'll play a little bit later. I love every time these two make a connection. Every time Wesley and Lila make a connection, I'm interested. And I love the fact that they now have matching scars on their necks. That's fun for Dad as well as the kids.
She consumed.
So everyone's got an opinion here. And Stephanie
Think about our proposal.
having so much fun with this part. More fun dead now than when she was alive even. And there's a lot of stuff here that I clipped and went right from Amy posing the question and everyone looking back to Angel to chaos and violence. This little piece here was something I designed but could not shoot. And Skip Skolnick, who is a producer on the show, shot this for me, second unit. This piece, I think he did a great job. This is the familiar backlot at Paramount, where oddly the streets of Los Angeles look not dissimilar to the streets of New York or a backlot at Paramount. The point of this scene was really to show that Connor is a conflicted character, that deep down inside of him there is something of Angel, where he knows that to some degree he is responsible for the misery around him, but he destroyed a lie. And when he sees that this police officer, who is an officer of the peace, of which there appears to be none, is going to take his own life, even though Connor doesn't do it with great enthusiasm, he still feels he has to somehow intervene. Although I like the way that Vinny played that, because you're not sure if he's almost goading the guy to do this. And then he moves to stop him, and then we'll see Connor snap, setting up this notion that family means everything to this kid, because he's never really had one. This scene was a little bit longer too. All told, I think this episode was probably 9 or even 10 minutes over in its first cut. And at first I went through and just tried to trim up scenes, and then eventually I actually pulled out a couple of scenes altogether. And not just for the running time, but for pace. I think I had maybe 2 hours to shoot this scene. We'd shot a lot of the sporting goods store stuff this day, and it was a giant fight. It just went for hours and hours and hours. And finally I got up here and I pretty much had the option of getting 3 sizes. This is one of my favorite scenes, I think, in this episode. I think these two guys are great together. It's actually nice to see these two characters reforming the bond that they had initially in season 2. And I like the fact that that Gunn can see right through Wesley, but also that Gunn has his own agenda, which makes it interesting. And yeah, Alexis and his dry delivery of this stuff is just perfect. Again, as I was going through and structuring this episode, I knew that I had to continually remind the audience where we'd been. And we're looking for Jasmine. We were looking for Jasmine. We're looking for Connor. We're looking for Cordelia. And you want to come into a scene and feel like everybody has an agenda and that they're doing something. Even though really I'm just marking time until they all get into the limousine at the end of this act. So that was a bit of a tightrope walk. Now, if you'll notice here in this next scene, when David stands up, he seems to be getting dressed. And I'm glad no one seems to notice that. But it's almost, what were Fred and Angel doing? And in fact, there was an entire scene there that I took out where she was dressing his wounds from the alternate dimension. And they were talking about Connor and Cordelia. And he was worried that he wouldn't be able to get his son back. And in fact, that maybe he never really did have his son, at least emotionally. And it just felt like I really wanted to keep this act on story. Meaning, Lila had come in and made them this offer, and really every scene, to some degree, except for that one brief moment where we cut away to Connor and that police officer, should be about that question and about that offer. And, of course, the question being, would they take the offer? And here everyone's making their opinions known. Now here Alexis, I think, is just hilarious. And he's got no right to be hilarious in this scene, but he is. It just cracked me up, the big long pause he took there, so I had him do it on every take. And then I wanted to hold on Amy a little bit, try to play most of that in her point of view. And here's sort of unknown stalker point of view, just to give it a little mystery. And I don't know if you can see this, but she's holding her shoes. She's tiptoeing out. She got dressed up and she's up to no good. That Amy Acker, always up to no good. Again, when you're shooting on a TV schedule, you have to come up with ways to get the material that you need in the time that you have to do it. And here was a scene, ultimately with 5 people in it, in a limousine. And when you're shooting in this direction, if I had another character approach her from the other side, I would have to turn around and light the other side of it to shoot coverage. And I didn't have time to do that. So you may notice here that really this scene is composed of 2 shots. And this is a continuation of that shot that started on Amy's feet. And it comes out to hold Alexis. And then Jay here approaches from off camera. And now the 3 characters are together. And actually, I think this works not just as a time saver, but it's nice to see all 3 of them in the frame together.
What are the odds that
and
would be the most
I remember this night, she has a line that says, maybe we should go back inside, which she's saying there and stepping forward. And naturally, she wanted to sort of turn and start to move back toward the hotel. Well, I didn't have time to cover that. I needed her to move forward because I needed to get them to this limousine, and I needed to do it in such a way that I didn't have to get another shot. There we are finding David. David crosses and brings the camera back to these 3. And then the one piece of coverage that I had, which was cutting over here to the limo. So I asked her on that line, maybe we should just go back inside, if she would step forward and do intuitively the opposite of what she would do. And I think it added something to the scene a little bit. This was a big crane shot, and I was just going to use this one crane shot, come around on the crane, and pull up. But I covered myself, and I got all these little pieces too, which I really needed. Because, again, it's TV, and you don't have time to get the crane to do exactly what you need it to do. So I think this is probably 3 takes of that one crane shot, and then I needed those little pieces in order to bridge the good bits. This location, I believe, is in Thousand Oaks, and it's a very large business complex that I think houses many different companies. And they were kind enough to let us come in on a working day and bring in our giant film crew and all our equipment and our actors, and we shot it while they were working in their cubicles and in their offices. It was a really great location. It had a lot of depth, and we did very little dressing for it. So in this big scene here that introduces each character to their guide, I wanted to do it in one big Steadicam shot. And you'll notice it pretty much works that way, although I do continually cut back to David once the camera starts to move around. But it's a big 360, and Ross Berriman, who is our incredibly talented director of photography, arranged it so that I could look every single direction with that camera and not see any of his lighting equipment. and I think it worked pretty well.
She was right.
But again, I think probably there were good things in a couple different takes. So I did use some of the coverage in order to get the best of all possible worlds. There's a piece of coverage, and now I'm coming around. Now, actually, this shot here is the one that started on Alexis, that said, where he said, I don't think we'll be in any danger. And it went off Alexis, onto Jay, over to Amy, and then over to this character, who is Preston, who is from the entertainment division, who then brought us over to Andy. Initially, I had Andy holding that folder, but the timing seemed to work much better when Preston just snapped it open. I love this actor who plays Rutherford Cirque. Initially, I had named him Rutherford Hitchcock, but Joss, wisely I think, thought that the name Hitchcock had too much baggage attached to it, what with Alfred Hitchcock. So I changed it to Cirque, who was also a film director in the 50s, who directed what were known then as women's pictures. And he directed these very, very colorful and lurid melodramas. And we have often said that Angel is not unlike a Douglas Sirk movie, in that it's really about men and women in their relationships, and that it is a potboiler, and it is in fact a melodrama. Those elevators you see in the background were created by our production designers. There were no elevators there. Those were brought in and plugged into the reception area of this building. And you may or may not notice, but pretty much above them is just a floor with some more cubicles. We wanted to take advantage of the big corporate space. So I got this big shot here, which I really like. It just gives you a sense of it's got the Brazil aspect to it. And I love these two together. And more cubicles. Some of those people work there, some of them are extras. And then, of course, we dressed this little piece here to make it look like a security station. Pretty much the gun story is the one thing that is left unresolved. It's pretty much, again, setting up what might happen next year. This actor here, Jonathan Woodward, was in an episode of Buffy called Conversations with Dead People. And he was so good in that episode that when it came time for me to direct my last Firefly episode, which did not actually air here in the United States, we cast him in that as well, and he was great. I mean, he was completely different than he was in the Buffy episode. And when we talked about creating this character, we immediately thought of Jonathan. And we hope that this character can, in fact, recur in Season 5. This is a scene that I trimmed down a lot. It went on and on and on and on and on in the original script. And I shot it all and probably cut it in half. And it seemed that where I go out here, there was a whole thing there with that guy who's in surgery that we cut. Where I go out here is probably the right place to go out, which is on a punchline, which is always a good place to go out of a scene. And again, our set decorators and our production designer really just took a little piece of this building we were shooting in, put up that wall with that door that says laboratory, that's all added, and then just brought in all this stuff to make it look like a lab. And it really does have that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory feel, considering most of it is beakers full of colored water. It's the Kool-Aid Factory. And I love Amy walking around with the large weapon. This is a set. This is back at Paramount. This shot here came around on the Steadicam, and it took forever. And my editor sped that up, and I actually thought it was hilarious when I saw it. So we kept it like that. This was David Fury's idea, to have just a few books instead of some giant, endless library. And I think it was David's invention as well, that when he opens the book, it's some kind of template that magically accesses something that's locked away someplace else. And we see the words appear. I thought that was a nice touch. And it's nice now our effects guys can do these things, these CGI effects, and you don't have to lock the camera down, so that's all still on the Steadicam as those words appear. So everything's very organic. If you have a scene that's moving around a lot, like this one on a Steadicam, you don't need to lock down and become stiff just for a quick effect shot. This actor sort of reminded me of a combination of Ian McKellen and Leonard Nimoy and someone else that I can't remember. But he's terrific. And then we're going to see some more of Wesley's cool gadgets. And it's all CG. There was nothing there. We come down and the people at Radium create that. And there he goes. We're not sure where. This little exchange here in the hallway was something that we were going to shoot at the big location, and I actually cut it from the schedule because I was running out of time. And then when I saw that frosted glass, I realized here's an opportunity to play that. I thought that was nice. Another very long, talky scene that I am never bored during. These two are great together. This office will probably change a little bit in terms of the design next year. Again, we're setting up season 5 with this episode.
I have.
And all the possibilities that are inherent in this offer that is being made. I took out the sound of the drapes opening there so that Angel wouldn't look like an idiot.
I'm not bursting into flames.
This is all on stage at Paramount.
Necro-tempered glass. The whole building's fitted with it. Helps keep those uplifting, wholesome rays from charbroiling the boss. And 30% more energy.
It was important to throw every piece of seduction we could at Angel to try to get him to accept this deal. But at the end of the day, the only thing that convinces him to take this is that he sees a way to save his son.
Bye, Mr. Sunshine. Hello, Bloomy.
We had talked about when we created the character of Connor at the end of season 3 that we'd bring in a teenager and
That's what you choose.
that he would be involved in season 4 of the show. And it was always somewhere in our minds that perhaps he would only last a season, and that is in fact what happened. We all loved Vincent. We thought he was great. We just felt that it was time to end that character's story. We were going to end it in a much uglier, more Mordred, violent-like fashion, but we'd all grown so fond of the character and of the actor that we didn't want to do that. And also it was a nice way to give somebody a happy ending for once.
Doesn't that usually mean you've been eaten?
There's some dialogue here that actually sets up the Buffy series finale. As she brings over this folder. Joss was writing the Buffy series finale, and I was writing this, and he called me and said, she has to give him an amulet. I need an amulet. It's going to play in the Buffy episode, so you need to set it up there. So I wasn't quite sure what it was for or what it would do, but there it is. And it's always nice when a character on Angel mentions Buffy. At least it is to me. And now it becomes about Cordelia and Connor. I tried to get them moving around this office as much as possible. 4.5 pages of talky talk. You want them moving a little bit because you want it to constantly be changing visually, which is also why I'm jumping over different sides of their shoulders as much as I can, have them shifting in the frame. Now, when I initially shot this scene, I was too close on this screen that you're about to see, so I went back and picked it up on a day of inserts later. You really couldn't tell how big it was, so I needed to see it in terms of scale to the room, which is why I got something wider. It still doesn't look as big as it really was. And as you can probably tell, that the words that are coming out of that newscaster's mouth do not match her lips at all. And that is because I didn't actually shoot or write anything for that until the last minute.
Really does have your
And in fact, that news footage was from another episode. And then we looped in the lines later. Stephanie was having some back problems this day, so I couldn't actually have Angel slam her up against the wall, so I found a way to start on that image of Connor and pull back, so you almost feel like that happened.
Make it stop now.
I absolutely love these two in this scene together. When I first shot this scene, I shot the scene once, but I didn't give David anything to do. I didn't give him a moment to make a decision. That's maybe my favorite thing when he comes flying back into her face. I didn't give him anything to do in terms of reacting and making a choice. So on a day of pickups, and without Stephanie there, which just shows how great David is, this shot here, David is playing to the wall. Because this was shot several days later, because I wanted him to do that. I wanted him to look over, see his son's face, and then make a decision. So there's David, and now we're back to the day before. And that helped me a lot. The music you may hear in the background here, the elevator music, was the same music that I used in season 2 when Angel was in an elevator with Holland Manners, when he came back, not unlike Lila's character, dead with wounds, but his contract hadn't expired with the company, and so he was still employed.
Oh no. Hey, we better not be going where I think.
And pretty soon we're going to get to the most terrifying night of my life, which is when we had this leopard. There were 2 leopards, and initially I wanted a jaguar, and they didn't have one, so they sent me a brochure. The company that handled the animals sent me a brochure of these cats, and I thought, well, we're going to be in the White Room. Let's get the blackest looking cat we can find. And so we got this leopard, actually, and it is spotted. You just can't tell because its coloring is so dark. And there's been some speculation that that's a Black Panther, which may be in the same family, it may be a cousin, but there really was no political statement being made here with Gunn and the Black Panther. And in fact, when we put these 2 shots together, that's green screen. It's a split screen. The endless room is CGI, and the cat is on the same stage that Jay is on, but they're on at different times, and then we put those 2 shots together. But he may as well have been there with Jay, because we were all sitting behind the camera when we were getting the cat's coverage, and it kind of got out of its chain. And Jay, thankfully, didn't mention this to me until after the shot was done and they had it back in the chain, because I would have gone screaming from the room like a girl. It was a beautiful animal, though. That's a little stock footage of some Boston cops. We couldn't find a very interesting store to shoot this sports store stuff in, and actually we ended up dressing the lobby of a beautiful theater on the lot at Paramount, and making it look like a sporting goods store. At some point, you may even see the little Paramount logo, which I think might be on that balcony above these guys. But our set decorator really created something that you buy. You can kind of see the little mountain there above the wooden sign, which is actually the Paramount Mountain. I'm not sure where Connor learned how to make bombs. So when it's wide and out of focus, it's Mike Massa. Then I cut to David, and there's Mike. This little piece I picked up later, and then I shot this. We tried to do an optical illusion to show how far those filing cabinets go, and it looked okay. But actually, Zoic came in and added a little CGI magic to make it look even further. This is one of the first scenes, I think, of the episode that I shot. This initially in the shooting script was 2 scenes. practically cleaved in half. I think we went out of this scene when he says, "Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think you do." We sort of left on this pregnant question and went to a lot of Angel and Connor stuff, and then came back to them as they finished the scene. And it really felt as if they had been frozen in time, because it just felt like the scene wanted to play as one scene. So I put it all back together. Initially, I think what we'd written
Come on, Wes.
was he sets her contract on fire, and then we see it come back together in a magical CGI kind of way. And of course, this guy named Joss Whedon had a much better idea, which was that he would go back to the file and it would just simply be back in there after he'd burned it, which was not only easier to shoot and cheaper, it was just better storytelling.
You suffered enough.
These two were great. Every time Alexis had to drop this thing that was in flames, there was the giant sound of a fire extinguisher and a prop guy off camera stomping out the flames, and they just stayed in character and waited for that noise to pass and then continued the scene, while everyone behind the camera was trying not to laugh, because it just sounded ridiculous. Nice moment between them. And we're back into the lobby of the theater. Oh, I mean the sporting goods store. David and Vincent this day were both so gracious to each other and so great. It had taken me a long time, really, to get this scene right. I think I'd written 3 or 4 versions of it. And the first 2 versions bared no resemblance to what I ended up coming up with here. And they were great. Vincent called me. He was really happy with the scene. He said, "I read it once and I memorized it. That means it works." And then I watched them play the scenes together, and, he wasn't wrong. But what was nice, it takes hours to shoot something like this. My shot of Charisma, she came in for this shot. She had just given birth, and she was great. She came in just to do that for me. So it takes hours to shoot a scene like this, and it's a very emotional scene where, the son is going crazy and the father is practically in tears because there's nothing he can do to help his boy. And you'll see. I mean, there's several sizes. You want close-ups and things that are wider, and which means they're playing the scene over and over and over, 10, 12 times, because you have to shoot everything on one side, then you have to turn around and do it all again and get all the same sizes on the other actor. And Vincent gave performance quality work when he was off camera, and David did the same for him, which you don't always see. But on every take, every time, they gave it their all. And they were doing that so that the actor who was reacting to them and who was on camera would have all the juice they needed to give their best performance. And I think it really shows. This scene was a little bit longer as well. I had some references to Holtz in it. There is still a small reference to Holtz when he says, "You let him get me." But there was talk about, I think Holtz loved me, I think he tried, but he couldn't love me more than he hated you, and there was more talk about Jasmine. There was a lot of talk about characters who weren't actually in this episode. And the scene was running a little bit long as it was, and so I felt that I could lose those pieces, and if you were a fan of the show, if you were familiar with the show, if you knew the show's history, you would get it subtextually. And if you were just coming in for the first time and seeing this episode, hopefully there would be enough there that you would at least understand emotionally what the context was. I mean, clearly here's a father and a son who are having some bad times. What with the woman with the bomb strapped to her on the floor and all. Again, this was designed so that we would cut away after the first blow is struck, when they start to fight, we would cut back to that scene in the file room with Lila and Wesley. But because I put those scenes together, and I felt like once I was in this scene, I really didn't want to get out of this scene. I just stayed here, and so you'll notice that the bombs are on Connor, and then pretty soon they won't be. There was a little piece where Angel ripped them off, and when I was cutting the fight, that piece didn't actually work because I'm a hack. So they just sort of disappear. Vincent really gave it all. Put a little dust on this bomb thing here and shot it in slow motion so you get that. And then the fight, which took me all day. Now you notice the bombs are gone, and somehow they got way across the room. But I thought, well, if there's enough violence happening, maybe people won't notice it. And there was a thing coming up here where we had dressed a knife, just sort of sitting on a display on a box. And Angel grabbed it and threw it at Connor. And when I looked at the dailies, I realized really what a hack I am, because I didn't notice, nor did anyone else really, that it just looked incredibly artificial, that it would just be sitting there. So I went back and shot that with the glass case later. Angel comes down with the knife, and the prophecy is fulfilled. The father will kill the son. And again, it's not, nothing's really spelled out for you here, but you do, I think, understand by the end of the episode that when Angel said to Lila, I'm going to tell you what the deal's going to be, he struck some sort of bargain with her. And there's some kind of blood magic going on here. Because as we will discover, Connor is in fact not dead. Well, old Connor is dead, and new Connor is, has lived an entire life apart from Angel. Poor Andy didn't know this song. I love watching them dance together. There was a whole moment that I wanted to play between Wesley and Lila when she enters this scene later, but it was just so much about, you know, what happened to Connor, where's Cordelia, that it just felt like that emotion had been played. Jay is so good there. He really does look different as those doors open. And we know something strange has happened to Gunn in the White Room, and we'll find out in season 5 what that was. And there are more strange things in store for Gunn. And they talk about how they should probably take this deal. And really what we were saying to the network was, you should really take this deal, because this show's going to be cool. It's going to be cool, and it's going to be different than what it was. I'm really proud of the last 4 seasons of this show. But I do think it was time to shake up the paradigm a little bit. It was starting to get very soapy, and I don't mean that in an overwrought way. I just mean that you really, really couldn't miss an episode. Otherwise, it would be hard to follow the story. And we wanted to create a new paradigm that could continue the novel approach, because TV is really like reading a novel. You want to see what's going to happen in the next chapter. But we wanted to make it a little more user-friendly so that people could tune in and understand what these people were doing. We also felt like we'd finally found the metaphor for young adulthood. We talked about that when we first started the show in the first season. What's the metaphor for your 20s? And we never really could come up with one. Plus, we had a main character who was 240. So that was a little hard to resolve. But this notion that we'd worked for Greenpeace. We were the radical outsiders who were trying to make a difference. And now we've been offered a job at a big oil company. We have to work for the man, and can we keep our ethics intact? And, what's that like? That really is a metaphor for growing up. And I think you're going to see that that's going to work very well in season 5. Who's Connor? Made a lot of people mad. Car's going left to right, and then the next good shot of the car, it was going right to left, and I didn't want it to change directions, so now it's on the wrong side of the road because I flipped the shot. Oh well. This little piece here was shot on location of David getting out of the limo and walking toward a house in the distance, which is in fact not the house that you'll see when we get closer, because the house you will see when we get closer was on the stage at Paramount. And in fact, it was Wesley's apartment, which was redressed. And some of you may recognize some of the shape of the architecture that is in fact Wesley's living room that has been converted into kind of a cabin retreat. So now we're back on the stage, and David is just so great at stuff like this, where he doesn't have a word to say and tells you everything just with a few looks. I really wanted this scene to feel different than the rest of the episode, which is why it's all herky-jerky and spinning around and handheld. I think maybe I was returning to Firefly a little bit, because this is sort of the style in which we shot that show. But I wanted it to feel very naturalistic and very alive, that these were real people, this was a real family, and these actors were great. I mean, they came in for one scene, they did not know each other, and they sat down and we read through the scene, and I'm like, let's shoot this, because they were terrific. You really felt like they knew each other and that it was a family. So Connor gets to make the same toast that was made in the first episode this year. And Angel's hallucination of a happy family becomes a reality here. But he's forever the outsider. And he turns and walks away, and we pull away. And that's the end of season 4 of TV's Angel. Come back and see season 5.